sex and sorcery, the Starfall Covenant. Friends, before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook, and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you in advance. Some scars are not etched in flesh, but in the very air we breathe. I know this truth as intimately as I know the weight of a quill in my hand. The air in Eldoria still carries the ghost smoke of the Starfall War, a conflict that ended a decade ago but never truly ceased. It lingers in the way mothers still glance nervously at the sky, in the hollowed-out districts being slowly rebuilt with magic and grief, in the haunted eyes of those who remember when the stars themselves rained fire. We are a city healing, but some wounds are so deep they become part of the foundation. My own healing was found in translation, not of languages but of longing. In the quiet scriptorium where I worked, I took the dry, tactical reports of guild mages and turned them into something with a pulse. Stories of love forged in the crucible of war, of passion blooming in the ruins. Forbidden, of course. The guilds preferred their heroes sterile and their history bloodless. But I knew the real magic wasn't in the fireballs or the shields. It was in the trembling hand of a soldier writing one last letter home, in the look between two enemies who chose a different path. That was the truth I sought, the truth I smuggled onto parchment under the guild's inattentive noses. Tonight, the ghost smoke felt heavier, the scars on the city throbbing with a dull ache. A storm was brewing, not the kind Bianna could sense, but something older. Shivering, I pulled my cloak tight and descended into the streets, seeking the one place where the air was always clear. The moon and ember. Our alcove was a sanctuary. The fire crackled, pushing back the evening chill and the weight of memory. Mira was already there, which was becoming a worrying habit. She was dissecting a scroll with the intensity of a surgeon, her red hair a fiery contrast to the grim set of her mouth. "Let me guess," I said, sliding onto the bench. Another post-war restitution case mired in enough bureaucratic red tape to strangle a dragon. She looked up, her green eyes sharp. "Worse. A magical asset and progeny dispute. A storm knight, deceased, left behind a child with an ether weaver from the other side. Now both guilds are fighting over who owns the child's magical potential. They're drafting a custody contract that reads like a breeding manifest for prize horses." She slammed her quill down. "They're quantifying a child's soul, Serena, in percentages and clauses." I pushed a glass of wine toward her. "And what does the law say?" "The law is silent on the matter of the heart," she said, her voice tight. "It only sees assets and liabilities." Our bleak conversation was interrupted by Kala's arrival. She moved like a secret everyone wanted to know. Her gown the color of deep twilight, the scent of night phlox and something sharper, like lightning-charged rain trailing in her wake. "Darlings," she purred, gracefully taking her seat and summoning the wine carafe with a flick of her wrist. "The emotional climate in the city is particularly fraught tonight. All this unresolved tension." She poured a glass and added a drop from a pearl-lined vial. The wine swirled into a mesmerizing spiral of silver and blue. A little something for focus, and to dilute the bitterness of Myra's latest moral quandary. "It's not a quandary, it's an abomination," Mira retorted, though she accepted the topped-up glass I offered her. "And my bitterness is what prevents this city from descending into outright magical barbarism." "Debatable," Kala murmured, her eyes twinkling. The final piece of our puzzle arrived with a gust of wind that made the candles gutter. Bianna Storm stood framed in the doorway, her armor still bearing the day's dust, her expression thunderous. She didn't sit so much as collapse into her chair, reaching for the carafe with a grimace. "The commander," she bit out, not waiting for a question. "He's assigned me to the Veterans Outreach Program. I spent the afternoon in the Ashen District, listening to old soldiers talk about the siege of the Silver Bridge." Her hand trembled, a tiny spark jumping from her fingertip to the wooden table, leaving a faint scorch mark. "They look at my uniform and they see what? A symbol of what they lost? A reminder of the power that failed them? I can feel their pain, their anger, and this damned storm inside me wants to answer it, to scream back." She looked at her hands as if they belonged to a stranger. "How do you offer comfort when your very presence is a threat?" The table fell quiet. This was our ritual, the bearing of wounds inflicted by a world still healing from its own. It was then that the door opened, and the brewing storm outside seemed to step into the tavern. He was tall, built with the lean, hard muscle of a man who knew his way around a fight. His clothes were practical, worn leather and dark wool, but they couldn't disguise the air of authority that clung to him like a cloak. His hair was the color of dark honey, and his face was all strong lines and a neatly trimmed beard. But it was his eyes that held me. They were the color of a summer sky, and they were devastatingly familiar. A collective, sharp intake of breath came from our table. Mira went rigid, her face pale. Kala's playful smile vanished, replaced by stunned recognition. Bianna's hand went to the hilt of her sword, because we all knew him. We had all seen his face on victory proclamations and memorial plaques. Captain Rylan Thorne, hero of the Starfall War, the man who had led the final brutal charge that broke the enemy lines, and the man who had signed the execution order for Myra's first love, a soldier accused of treason. He was supposed to be dead. He scanned the room, his gaze sweeping over the patrons until it landed on our table, on Mira. The silence that fell was deeper than any I had ever known, thick with a decade of grief and unspoken accusations. He walked toward us, each step measured. He didn't look at the others. His eyes were fixed on Mira. "Mistress Doran," he said, his voice a low, gravelly thing that held the echo of battlefield commands. It was not the voice of a ghost. Mira stood, her knuckles white on the table. "You have a remarkable talent for defying obituaries, Captain." A faint, pained smile touched his lips. "A necessary deception." His gaze finally shifted, taking in the rest of us. Kala's wary assessment, Bianna's defensive posture, my own stunned silence. "I need your help. All of you." He reached into his tunic and pulled out a small, smooth stone. It was unremarkable, gray and dull, but as he placed it on the table, it began to glow with a soft, internal light, and the ghost smoke scent in the air intensified, coiling around us like a phantom. "This is a remnant," he said, his voice low and urgent. "A piece of the heart of the fallen star that started the war. We thought it was inert. We were wrong." The stone pulsed and a faint, whispering echo filled my mind, a siren song of forgotten pain and boundless power. "The Starfall Covenant was not a victory," Rylan Thorne said, his summer sky eyes shadowed. "It was a postponement. And the truce is about to break. The other side is rising again, and this time they're not coming with armies. They're coming for what we left behind." His eyes locked with Myra's, and a decade of history hung between them, heavy and unresolved. "They're coming for our children." The word children hung in the air, a detonation that shattered the tenuous silence. Myra's face, a moment ago a mask of cold fury, crumpled into something raw and vulnerable. She took a sharp step back as if physically struck. "What did you say?" The question was a whisper, stripped of all its legal precision, leaving only a mother's terror. Ryland's gaze was unwavering, filled with a profound, weary empathy. "The children born in the year after the starfall, Mira, the ones who glowed. The guilds called it residual etheric infusion, a harmless side effect of the celestial energies released at the war's end." Kalla's breath hitched. "The star touched," she murmured, her alchemist's mind connecting threads the rest of us couldn't see. "I've studied the phenomenon. Their magic is different, purer, unbound by guild limitations." "It's not residual," Ryland said, his voice low and urgent, "meant only for our table. The fallen star wasn't just a weapon. It was a seed. The children are its legacy. The other side, the ether weavers we fought, they didn't want to conquer us. They wanted to reclaim their lost god. And now they found a way to awaken it through the children." Vianna was on her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the stone floor. "My niece," she said, her voice a low, dangerous thrum. "Alara. She was born that year. She makes flowers bloom with a touch." Her hand went to the sword at her hip. "You're telling me she's a vessel for some dead star god?" "Not a vessel. A conduit," Ryland corrected gently, though his eyes were hard. "When the twin moons align in 3 nights, the ether weavers will perform a ritual. They will use the children's innate connection to draw the consciousness of the star back into this world. It will not be a rebirth. It will be a consumption. The children's spirits will be extinguished, their life force used to fuel a being of immense power, an entity that will not stop until this entire world is remade in its cold, silent image." The scope of it was too vast, too horrific to comprehend. This wasn't a border skirmish or a guild dispute. This was an attempted deicide, with our most vulnerable as the sacrifice. Mira finally found her voice, though it was thin and strained. "The guilds. The High Council. They must be told. They have armies." "The guilds are compromised," Ryland interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Or willfully blind. They see the children as future assets, tools to be controlled. They would lock them in gilded cages, study them, strip them of their uniqueness. They would never believe the truth. And if they did, their solution would be just another form of destruction." He looked at each of us, his gaze lingering on me last. "This is why I came to you. You operate outside their rigid structures. You see the truth they ignore. You understand that some things, love, loyalty, a child's spirit, are not commodities to be managed." He was speaking my own secret creed back to me, the very philosophy I smuggled into my forbidden stories. "What do you need us to do?" I asked, my own voice surprisingly steady. Ryland picked up the glowing remnant. "This is a key. It resonates with the star fragment buried deep beneath the city, in the old Starfall crater, the true heart of their power. We can't stop the ritual from happening. The celestial alignment is inevitable, but we can subvert it. We can use the remnant to travel to the crater, and using the children's connection, we can offer the star's consciousness a different choice." "A choice?" Mira asked, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "A covenant," Ryland said. "Not of domination, but of coexistence. We offer it a home in this world, not as a conqueror, but as a partner. A source of magic shared by all, not hoarded by a few. But to do that, we need representatives of this world's heart. We need magic that is not about control, but about essence. His gaze swept over us. The truth in your stories, Serena. The justice in your laws, Mira. The transformation in your alchemy, Calla. The raw, untamed life in your storm, Bianna. You four represent a balance the guilds have forgotten. You are the counteroffer. The audacity of it was breathtaking. We weren't being asked to fight an army. We were being asked to negotiate with a god. And you? Bianna challenged, her eyes narrowed at Rylan. Where do you fit in this diplomatic mission? A shadow of his old pain crossed his face. I am the bridge. I was there when the star fell. I carry its shrapnel in my soul, just as I carry the weight of every decision I made that day. His eyes found Myra's again, including the ones that cost me everything. The air between them crackled with a decade of unsaid words. Mira looked away, her jaw tight. The decision was made without a vote. It was in the protective fury in Bianna's stance, the furious curiosity in Calla's eyes, the dawning grim resolve on Myra's face. We would go. The journey to the Starfall crater was a descent into a wound. The land around it was still blighted, a jagged scar of black glass and twisted metal where nothing grew. The air hummed with a low, dissonant frequency that set my teeth on edge. The crater itself was a vast, bowl-shaped depression, and at its center stood a spire of pure dark crystal, the heart of the fallen star. It pulsed with a sickly, mesmerizing light. As the twin moons, Liana and Mora, began their slow, fatal dance into alignment above us, figures emerged from the shadows of the crater's rim. The Ether Weavers. They were clad in robes of shifting gray, their faces obscured, their movements eerily synchronized. They began to chant, a sound like grinding stones, and the crystal spire flared in response. A mile away in the city, we knew the star-touched children would be feeling the pull, their magic being siphoned, their consciousnesses slowly being drawn toward this place. Now, Rylan said, his voice tight. He held the remnant aloft. It blazed with a fierce white light, and a bridge of solid moonlight erupted from it, spanning the crater to the base of the crystal spire. Hold on to each other. Don't let go. We stepped onto the bridge. It was like walking on a beam of pure intention. The Ether Weavers' chanting intensified, and bolts of nullifying energy lanced toward us. Bianna roared, throwing up a shield of crackling lightning that absorbed the blows, the feedback causing several weavers to stagger back. We reached the spire. The presence of the star was overwhelming. An ancient, vast, and terribly lonely consciousness. Didn't feel evil. Felt hungry. And tired. Now, Rylan yelled over the psychic wind. Show it. Show it what it's trying to destroy. I closed my eyes and did what I do best. I poured out every story of love and sacrifice I had ever written, every fragile human moment of connection I had ever chronicled. I showed it the beauty of a world that felt, that loved, that grieved. Mira spoke next, her voice ringing with the power of absolute conviction. She spoke of laws not as chains, but as promises between people, of justice as the framework for compassion, of a world where a child's future wasn't predetermined by a guild's ledger. Calla's contribution was a wave of pure, undiluted emotion, the joy of discovery, the ache of longing, the fierce burn of loyalty. She offered it the alchemy of a life fully lived, in all its messy, brilliant complexity. And Bianna didn't speak. She simply let go. She released the storm inside her, not in a destructive blast, but in a wave of pure, vibrant, untamed life. It was the wind in the trees, the rain on the parched earth, the electric charge in the air before a summer storm. It was the wild beating heart of the world. The star's consciousness recoiled, then stilled. It was listening. But the Ether Weavers saw their ritual unraveling. Their leader, a tall figure with eyes like chips of obsidian, raised a blade of pure shadow. He wasn't aiming for us. He was aiming for the one who had made this possible. The bridge. He was aiming for Rylan. No. Myra's scream was ripped from a place deeper than law, deeper than logic. The shadow blade flew. Time seemed to slow. Rylan turned, his eyes meeting Myra's, an apology and a farewell in his gaze. And then Mira did something impossible. She didn't cast a defensive spell. She didn't throw up a ward. She stepped in front of him. The blade meant for the bridge for Rylan took her in the shoulder. She cried out, a shock of crimson blooming against her crimson robes, and fell. The world exploded into light and sound. The scream that tore from my throat was lost in the cataclysm. Mira fell, a splash of vivid crimson against the monochrome devastation of the crater. Time fractured. I saw Rylan's face, a landscape of pure, unadulterated horror. The legendary war hero utterly shattered. He caught her before she hit the ground, his roar of anguish swallowed by the shrieking wind. But the star had felt it. In that ultimate illogical act, the lawyer who built walls of reason throwing herself in front of the man who represented her deepest pain. It had felt something its ancient cosmic consciousness could not comprehend. A love that defied all logic, all history, all self-preservation. The blinding white light from the crystal spire did not explode outward in destruction. It imploded, then unfolded, like a flower blooming at impossible speed. The grinding chant of the Ether Weavers cut off as if severed by a blade. The nullifying energy bolts dissolved into harmless motes of light. The very air stilled, the psychic wind replaced by a profound, listening silence. The star was choosing. Rylan cradled Mira, his hands pressing against the wound, his face ashen. Mira, why? Her eyes fluttered open, glazed with pain but shockingly clear. The law of unintended consequences, she rasped, a ghost of her old wit in her voice. Also, you still owe me an explanation. Then her gaze shifted to something beyond him, beyond us all, and her breath caught. Look! The crystal spire was transforming. The dark, jagged shards softened, flowing like liquid obsidian, reshaping themselves. The pulsing, sickly light warmed, becoming a gentle golden radiance. From its heart, a tree of pure light erupted, its branches spreading over the crater like a protective canopy. Where its light touched the blighted earth, soft green moss began to spread, and tiny starlit flowers pushed through the black glass. The star had not been reborn. It had been redeemed. It had chosen the covenant. The Ether Weavers knelt, not in defeat, but in awe, their gray robes now looking like shadows soon to be banished by the dawn. Their lost god was not gone. It had become something new, something that included us. We gathered around Mira. Kala was already there, her hands glowing with a soft green energy as she pressed a poultice of crushed moon petal and healing moss against the wound. The blade was meant to sever magic, she murmured, her brow furrowed in concentration. It cannot comprehend a wound made for love. It will heal. Byanna stood guard over us, her storm quiet, her expression one of fierce protective pride. She had not destroyed. She had helped create. Rylan didn't let go of Mira. He held her as Kala worked, his forehead resting against her uninjured shoulder, his body trembling with the aftershock of near unimaginable loss. The war-hardened captain was gone. leaving only a raw, vulnerable man. When the bleeding had stopped and Myra's breathing had steadied, he finally spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "His name was Kale," he began, the words dragged from a place of deep, long-buried pain. "He wasn't a traitor. He was a patriot. He discovered that the High Command was planning to use the Fallen Stars Core not to end the war, but to create a weapon that would subjugate both sides under their rule. He came to me. We devised a plan to sabotage the weapon, but we were discovered." He lifted his head, his summer sky eyes meeting Myra's, begging for understanding. "They gave me a choice, Mira. Execute one man for treason, a man who was my friend, and save the chance to end the war honorably, or let them execute us both, along with dozens of our loyal soldiers they accused of being co-conspirators, and let the weapon be completed. There was no good choice, only a terrible, necessary one. I let them believe he acted alone. I made sure his name was cleared posthumously once the war was over, the official story of my death. It was the only way to protect those who had helped us from the remnants of the High Command's loyalists. The truth, a decade in the telling, settled over us. It was not a clean truth. It was messy and painful and stained with blood and sacrifice. It was the kind of truth I tried to capture in my stories." Mira reached up a trembling hand and touched his cheek. "You let me hate you," she whispered, her voice thick with tears she would never have allowed herself to shed before this night. "All these years. You carried that and you let me hate you. It was the only thing I could give you," he said softly. "A clean anger is easier to bear than a complicated grief." In that moment, the last of Myra's walls, the fortification she had built around her heart with legal precedent and sarcasm, crumbled to dust. We returned to a city on the brink of a new dawn. The Starfall crater was no longer a blight, but a sanctuary. The star-touched children were safe, their connection to the newly awakened world tree a source of wonder, not fear. The guilds, shocked and humbled, had no choice but to accept the new reality. The balance of power had shifted, not to another faction but to life itself. In the weeks that followed, the changes were profound. Mira, her shoulder healed but her heart forever altered, took on the magical asset and progeny case and argued not from guild law, but from the precedent of the Starfall Covenant itself. She secured the child's right to a life free from guild ownership, a landmark ruling that began to reshape Eldoria's very foundation. Her partnership with Rylan was a quiet, steady thing, built on hard-won truth and a love that had been tested in the fires of war and betrayal. Kala closed her shop in the Vale district and opened an academy, teaching the Star-Touched and others how to understand their magic as a gift to be explored, not a tool to be mastered. Bianna was promoted to commander of the city guard, her storm now a symbol of protective strength. She no longer saw her power as a curse, but as the force that helped defend a new beginning. And I sat at my desk, the scent of night-blooming jasmine from the now-flourishing crater drifting through my window. I wrote the official account of the Starfall Covenant, but in the quiet hours I wrote a different story. A story of a soldier and a lawyer, of a choice that cost everything, and a love that refused to remain a casualty of war. Rylan and Mira often visit. We still meet at the Moon and Ember, our table now a place for planning futures, not dissecting past pains. Watching them, their hands linked under the table, their silences now comfortable instead of charged, I understand the most profound magic of all. It is not in the grand gestures, the world-altering prophecies, or the fallen stars. It is in the quiet, stubborn choice to love, even when the world gives you every reason not to. It is in the second chances forged in truth, and the peace that comes not from forgetting the scars, but from learning to wear them not as wounds, but as proof that we survived, that we loved, that we built something new from the ruins. And that, my darlings, is the most powerful story ever told. And so the echoes of war finally fade, replaced by the gentle light of a covenant written not in blood, but in understanding. We hope Serena's journey, and the sacrifices made in the Starfall crater, reminded you that even the deepest wounds can heal when met with courage and love. But the world of Velvet Valor is vast, and every ending reveals new beginnings. If this story of redemption, second chances, and love that defied destiny captured your heart, then you've found your home for full-length, cinematic romantasy, ready to discover where our next journey leads. Sparkles, subscribe to Velvet Valor Romantasy Audiobook and never miss a new tale. Let us whisk you away to worlds where love is the most powerful magic of all. Sparkles, like this video if you believe in forgiveness, second chances, and love that survives even the hardest truths. Sparkles, comment below and tell us, could you forgive someone who carried such a painful secret? What moment in this story touched you most? We read every comment and love hearing from our community. Your support is the magic that allows us to create these complete audiobooks. Thank you for listening, for sharing in these emotional journeys, and for keeping your heart open to stories that remind us of the power of redemption. Until our next adventure begins, yours in stories and sorcery, the Velvet Valor narrator.